You're listening to Further Faster in association with Montane, the podcast that asks ultra athletes, mountaineers, and explorers the why and the how.
Hello and welcome to the latest Further Faster podcast in association with Montane. My name's Daniel Neilson. So, all stories have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. But in this episode, unusually, we're starting at the end and working our way backwards. You see, the story of Australian Steve Plain starts off pretty impressively, climbing all the highest mountains in each of the 7 continents in only 4 months with mountaineer John Gupta, and raising money on the way. But as we travel backwards through the story, it just gets more and more jaw-dropping. It's also a story that will inspire, especially when you realise that less than 5 years ago, Steve had never climbed a mountain. So we caught up with him in his hometown of Perth, Australia, to dig into how this record attempt came about, what kept him going through all the dark times, and the moment that changed his life forever. Listen in. Okay, so here I'm with Steve Plain. Steve's just completed a remarkable project called the 7 in 4 project. First of all, tell us where you are right now.
Currently just back at home in Perth in Western Australia.
Okay, and you're at home, are you?
Yeah, that's right. So it's Friday evening over here. So we got back after Project 7 in 4. We completed in mid-May. And so just been back in Australia for a couple of weeks, enjoying some sunshine and some relatively warmer weather compared to where we were for the previous months. Yeah,
sure. So, okay, we're going to attack this in a slightly different way than we normally have done in the past. So we're going to start more recently and then kind of work back through your life, really, and find out, because this is one of those stories that remarkably just gets more interesting the further back, more remarkable the further back you go. So, first of all, what is the 7 in 4 project?
So Project 7 in 4 was a project I set myself a personal challenge a few years back. And basically, in short, 7 in 4 was my goal to climb the 7 summits, being the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents in under 4 months. And in the process, aiming to beat the previous world record for the fastest time, which was previously 126 days.
Right, okay. And so what were the 7 mountains?
So 7 mountains, 7 summits, the highest on each continent. So we started in Antarctica, with the highest down there is Mount Vincent. Yeah. From there, went to South America, and the highest there, Aconcagua. Yeah. Then round to Africa and climbed Kilimanjaro. Then to Australasia and climbed Carsten's Pyramid. Okay, and it's 2 7 summits.
Right. Where's the pyramid? Sorry? Where's Carsten's Pyramid?
Carsten's Pyramid is actually in West Papua, which is a province of Indonesia. So a really remarkable place, very remote, and going up in the jungles up there, it was absolutely fascinating.
I bet.
Yeah, so then with the 7 summits list, there's 2 versions. So one classifies Australasia as a continent, so we climbed Carsten's. The other one classifies Australia as a continent, with the highest being Kosciuszko, so we did that also. Okay. And then after Australia, went to Elbrus, to highest for Europe, which is Elbrus. Then to North America and climbed Denali up in Alaska. And then most recently just finished off with the summit of Everest.
Right, blimey. And out of those, obvious question, but which of those were the most challenging?
The most challenging, far and away, everyone sort of thinks of Everest being the most challenging. Now, obviously, it's the highest, and you've got a lot of altitude to deal with. But for this specific project and the time frame we're trying to target in, by far and away the most challenging was Denali.
Right. Okay.
So to achieve the time frame of under 4 months meant we were summiting Elbrus and Denali out of season. So Denali, when we went in there, it was end of winter, early spring, and for 4 months, and for 17 days, expedition took us. We're the first ones in this season, right? And so no one had been in since the season shut down last year, and we're the first team in. There's a small team of 4 of us. And for 17 days, we're the only ones on the hill in some really, really challenging conditions. So extremely cold and extremely remote, and having to be fully self-sufficient. So that was, by far and away the toughest out of all the 7.
Right. Okay. I mean, it can be a rough mountain. I think people maybe tend to underestimate it. I know I've heard all sorts of kind of as many disasters on Denali as any other mountain. Really, it's a tough place. What was what was so challenging about it?
For us, and like you say, it is often underestimated, and even for climbers in season, and the season's actually going on at the moment, and even for climbers in season, it only has about a 50% summit success rate. So in season, it's even very, very low success rate. But the most challenging for us was obviously the time of year we did it, when it was going in March, and just the extreme temperatures and the weather you get at that time of year made it incredibly difficult compared to a normal in-season climb. Plus, obviously, all the additional aspects of climbing out of season, having a fully self-supported trip, so being the only ones on the mountain, so having to look after ourselves the whole way. Have myself, John Gupta, who's with Montane, and two other two of John's friends as well came across. So we had a small team of 4, which was fantastic, a great number. And thankfully, we were successful. It was the summit day itself. We had been pinned down a storm for 3 days, hadn't been able to leave the tent for 3 days, and the weather was forecast to stay bad for at least another week. And there was this one little lull in the storm of 24 hours, so we had to attempt the summit from one of the lower camps, which resulted in a very long summit day in very extreme conditions. But, all went really well.
Excellent. And so, for you personally, what were the moments on that mountain where you may have thought, we're not going to do it, or I'm not sure I'm up to this, or were there those low moments?
Yeah, there always was, and I think for us, when we set out on our summit day, we set out from what they call 14K camp, or 14,000 feet. And myself and John set off that day. The other two were myself and John had the benefit of being pre-acclimatised, coming off Elbrus, and we're moving quite well. So with the narrow window, we thought we'd give it an attempt. Weren't too sure how we get. We were trying to target the summit at around about 6 p.m. So we left camp early morning, and 6 p.m. was still several hours off the top. And I guess it was probably that point when we're moving slowly. It was getting late. The sun was going down, and that was probably the real point where we were sort of thinking, how far can we keep pushing it into the night, and still get safely. And I guess I can remember one moment there on the hill where we're climbing, just myself and John roped up together, and John actually came together for a bit, just for a quick break, and it would have been sort of late afternoon and then John just said, look, if we keep pushing up, do you have enough in you to get back down? And that was a real decision point, and I guess the most critical, do we have enough in us to get back down? And myself and John, I think we both sort of felt comfortable that while we were pushing the limits, we both could keep pushing throughout the night. So it was really at that point there, I think it was definitely the most decisive moment of the whole project. And it took us we didn't summit until a quarter to 10, so 9:45 p.m. About -5 on the top, and dark by that stage. So we definitely pushed it very hard, and it got back to camp by 5 a.m. the following morning.
Blimey, climbing through the night. So what's the relationship with John Gupta? How did you get to know him? And because obviously he's familiar to us and lots of Brits. He's a Montane athlete as well. How did you get involved with him, or how did you become friends or climbing partners?
Yeah, I first met John on I guess prior to starting Project 74, these 7 summits, I'd actually never done any mountaineering. I'd done a lot of other outdoor activities here in Australia, but hadn't done any mountaineering. And so I embarked on a bit of a training.
This is why this story is so good. Okay.
It's not every day you sort of just wake up with no mountaineering experience thinking, I'll try do a 7 summits world record.
No.
But that is literally what I did. So I set about doing a number of practice expeditions. Started out in New Zealand doing an introductory mountaineering course down there, and then had a month's climbing in Peru with a guide over there. Then it was actually on my 3rd trip when I climbed Ama Dablam in Nepal. And on that trip, John was a trip with Tim Mosdale, led the expedition. But John was the guide for my group, and I acclimatised quite early, and so it just happened to be that myself and John climbed together on summit day ahead of the rest of the group, and so had a couple of nights up high together and climbed together that day, and got on fantastically. So we're actually in a pub after we got back to Kathmandu, in a pub after we'd summited Ama Dablam, and I just said to John, how do you fancy a winter ascent of Denali? And I think he thought it was a bit crazy at the time. I said, why the hell would you want to climb Denali in winter?
Yeah.
And then I guess explained what the whole project was. And yeah, from that stage, he was fully on board. And to be honest, I couldn't have done the project without him. So it was an awesome time.
Was it, so many questions. Was it, I mean, he's obviously, well, he's clearly more experienced than you were. Was it, I mean, experience is one thing, but there must have been something else in your relationship that clicked, that made you able to climb well together. What do you think that was?
Yeah, I think obviously we both got on very well right from the beginning. So, in terms of a friendship, we sort of kicked it off quite early, and we could tolerate each other. And in climbing, and and particularly what we've done, sort of 4 months together on the road, intense in some very tight conditions, is quite challenging. So we got on quite together from that perspective. But I think what probably kicked it off was when we're climbing together on Ama de Blanc. While John is obviously much more experienced than I am, and the wealth of experience that he brought to the project was immense.
Yeah.
But we both climbed it. John's incredibly fast on the mountain as well.
Okay.
And we both climbed at a fairly similar pace, and could both sort of move well together in the mountains at a similar pace. So while John has the technical expertise, when it came to sort of the physical endurance aspect, we both moved quite well together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was sort of really crucial that, just being a similar pace and being able to move together efficiently in the mountains was how we sort of paired up.
Okay. And then tell us about Everest. Was that a reasonably straightforward ascent?
Everest was, to be honest. People sort of make Everest out to be, great big massive ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we'd been through Denali and got to Everest, even myself and John were joking at times. I think we're up at Camp 4, getting ready to go for the summit. And it was probably about minus 30 that night, going for the summit of Everest. And we're just joking how balmy it was and how nice and pleasantly warm it was compared to where it come from. So as part of another one of my practice trips before I started Project 74, I did Lhotse last year. So Lhotse shares the same route as Everest up to just below the Geneva Spurs, just below Camp 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd seen most of the route before. I'm fairly familiar with the conditions. So once we got to Everest, went had a fair bit of confidence for that climb.
Sure. So, I mean, we talk about this kind of frame of reference where you may have achieved, or you've gone through tougher things on Denali than Everest. Therefore, Everest seemed a bit more straightforward. Now, you've managed to pack a career's worth of climbing in those 4 months. I mean, the difference between, or maybe when you started these practice climbs on Ama de Blanc and also on Lhotse, do you think that your progression has been markedly different? Has it just been compacted time, or are there other kind of issues that come along with that as well?
Is it markedly different compared to other climbers?
Yeah, other climbers that have spent 20 years working their way up to Lhotse or, those big 8,000 metre
and I
peaks.
guess where my progression's probably been somewhat different is, I guess a lot of climbers may start out, particularly like in the UK, start out with a lot of general rock climbing and other sort of winter climbing on lower altitude climbs, which you have a lot of close, in your backyard in the UK.
Yeah.
There's not too much over here for us, unfortunately, in Australia.
Not in Perth.
But while I didn't have the technical climbing experience, I'd spent a lot of time outdoors, done a lot of trekking, camping, self-supported remote hikes in some quite wilderness areas in Australia. And I think equally as important on the big hills is just a general ability to look after yourself in remote conditions. Obviously, you need the technical climbing aspect, but an ability just to be able to look after yourself, keep hydrated, keep warm, just do all the sort of personal admin things, I think is equally, if not more important for the success on the big climbs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think my background from that put me in pretty good stead, and sort of meant I was able to compress a lot of high altitude climbs in a fairly short period of time in the lead up to this project.
Right. Okay. And I told you we're going about this completely backwards. What's the future? This is the question I normally ask at the end, but what's the future hold? I mean, how old are you?
I'm 36, almost 37 actually. So.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday coming up.
Thank you.
So what's the next kind of plan that you've hatched?
I guess for myself, a lot of people have sort of thought, Project 74, 7 summits, and that'll be it. But for myself, it's just been an amazing journey, and it hasn't been about just doing the 7 summits record. Just the whole experience the whole way along. Just loved every minute of it, and just loved being in the hills. So definitely want to get back out and do some climbing in the very near future. Unfortunately, the immediately it's straight back to work. I'm actually by trade, I'm an engineer.
Okay.
So got to go back to work, full-time work, and earn some money again.
Yeah, fair enough.
But myself and John started talking about some more Himalayan climbing next year, hopefully. So a few more high altitude, challenging climbs, which I say the 7 summits is fantastic, but not all of them are over. Some of them are pretty basic. Yeah. And just high altitude treks really. So hopefully get back to the Himalayas and do some nice challenging peaks over there.
Okay. Did you complete the challenge? Did you become the fastest people?
The 7 summits?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. So 14th of May, we're still on the top of Everest, which stopped the clock, and we completed the 7 summits in 117 days.
Right.
So it took 9 days off the previous record.
Okay, congratulations. Okay, so this is where it gets, it's fascinating so far, but this is where it gets really, really amazing. Where were you the moment that you hatched the idea for this project?
Yeah, and I guess that, I say, probably the interesting one, or probably the more insane aspect of it was that not only did I have no mountaineering experience, at the time I was actually lying in hospital with a broken neck. Okay. And after I got dumped in a wave, just body surfing in a local beach over here in Perth, and broke my neck on impact and got taken to hospital. And I guess it was in the days where lying in hospital staring at the ceiling that the concept for Project 74 came about.
Okay. You were surfing, just chilling out on the beach, and it was a freak accident, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I wasn't even actually surfing, so I've just body surfing. So literally just tried to swim onto the wave and just body surf a wave into the shore, and just a small shore dumping wave, and got it terribly wrong. Went head and just got tumbled and went head first in, and I don't remember a lot of it. I can remember trying to swim onto the wave, and then upon impact I was knocked unconscious. Yeah. And then when I came to, I was still in the water and still couldn't breathe, and initially just felt dazed and disorientated. And it wasn't until I tried to move my arms to take a breath that my arms were paralysed, and that's when I realised it was quite a bit worse. And I guess very thankfully there were 2 volunteer surf lifesavers on the scene at the time, and had it not been for them, they came down and applied all the right spinal precaution measures and got me out of the water without exacerbating the injuries. And the doctors sort of said I had.
Who were they? Let's name check them. Do you know? Do you know their names? Often you don't know their names, but people who've rescued you don't know. But do you know? You know who it is?
No, we've kept in touch, and they've been amazing and provide support right for this project as well. Yep. So it's Lara and Gary Mattia. Okay. So father and daughter from the Cottesloe Surf Lifesaving Club over here. And so they did an awesome job. And then because I had unstable fractures, the doctors said had there been any further movement to my neck, it could have resulted in permanent paralysis. Right. But obviously the measures they took and got me straight onto a spinal board and kept my neck very stable was paramount in the long-term recovery that I was able to achieve.
Yeah. So when was this? When did this happen?
That was the 13th of December 2014. So right. 3.5 years ago.
Wow, not long ago at all. So then, how long were you in hospital for?
I was got an ambulance straight to one hospital, and they weren't able to treat me there. Didn't have the expertise. Had an emergency transfer to Royal Perth Hospital, and I was in Royal Perth Hospital there was a number of consultants, specialists consulting on my case, and it took 5 days. Initially, they wanted to operate. Right. To fuse the vertebrae to stop any further movement, which would have resulted in loss of movement in my neck. And thankfully, there were a lot of other complications, had a lot of ligament damage and other issues, which they said made the operation a little bit too complex. So they opted, after 5 days, put me in a halo brace, which is an external fixation device. Right. Incredibly painful to have fitted because it's literally having screws put into your head.
Oh, my gosh.
And then it was another week after that I was able to get up and start mobilising again in hospital. All up, it was a bit under 2 weeks. Once I had the halo brace on, they were keen for me to get up and get moving as quick as I could. And then had that on for another 4 months, where I was in and out of hospital continuously for 4 months, getting checkups with this halo. then had another 2 months in a soft neck collar before I was able to start proper rehab. So it was 6 months in total before I started getting to any proper rehab.
Okay, and this halo, it sounds like a medieval torture device. You basically you had screws put into your head and then you just couldn't move. Is that right?
That's right. So the halo is literally a metal ring which goes around the top of the head.
Yeah.
And there's 4 screws that go in on each quarter and literally screw into the skull, which affixes the ring to the head. And then there's 4 bars that come down off the halo that screw down into a solid vest which goes around your chest. And so that sort of completely immobilizes in fixing from the head to the chest, fully immobilizes the neck to allow the neck to heal. Obviously, with other breaks, like if you broke an arm or broke a leg, to immobilize it, that put you in a cast.
Yeah.
But you can't really easily put a neck in a cast.
No.
So this is the alternative for the neck.
This is going to sound a really stupid question. Were you scared? And what were you scared of?
Yeah, I don't think I was ever really, I wouldn't say scared, but obviously the initial sort of shock of being told you've had a broken neck and the uncertainty for a number of days until just not knowing what the long-term prognosis would be. For a number of days there, the doctors were sort of fearing the worst and talking about not being able to walk and wheelchairs and this sort of stuff, which obviously is incredibly frightening.
Yeah.
I guess through that, it sort of made me think at that point in time, and I was at this stage just still flat on a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. And made me sort of think at that sort of time, if this was it, or if that was it, or if I was stuck wheelchair bound after that, would I have been happy with what I'd achieved in my life to that point? And I guess sort of just thinking through that really made me realise that I'd put a lot of effort and focus on my professional career.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, pushed aside a lot of my own personal ambitions and challenges which I'd want to achieve personally. So it was really through that moment, I guess, that I thought, well, if I can come through this, I'll start focusing on some of my personal ambitions. And one of them was to do some mountaineering, and that's where the concept of a good starting point would be Project 74.
Right. Remarkable. So who did you tell first that this was your idea?
I didn't tell many people to start with because probably most people would have thought I was too insane at this stage.
I would have told you that was ridiculous. Yeah.
But I had a close mate who actually climbed Everest in 2012. A good mate from school days, and he came and visited us and gave me some nice words. And I guess he was probably the first one that I told that this is what I'm going to work towards. Yeah. I didn't tell anyone else, to be honest. Once I started doing a few of the practice climbs, so the first trip was Mount Aspiring in New Zealand, and did a mountaineering course down there. And when I was sort of writing a blog and email updates and things, I actually named it Practice Run Number 1. Right. And that was the subject line of the email. So family probably started to realise I was working towards something at that point in time, and then went, did number 2, Practice Run Number 3. It was actually after Ama de Blam when we'd done together with John Summit at Ama de Blam, and I guess that was the first trip we've been to reasonable altitude and fairly technical expedition. And,
it's still quite a serious climb, isn't it?
Absolutely, and probably more technical than Everest would be, and very very steep climbing, and you're up to 6,800 meters, or just short of 7,000, and so it's a serious mountain itself. And I was very happy with how I performed on that mountain. First time at proper altitude, and so after that one, I actually came out and did disclose after that what my actual true project intents were.
Okay, and when you were doing these practice climbs, and I guess all the way through the project, was it always in your mind of that decision that you'd made while you were in hospital? Were you always thinking, this is what I've promised myself that I'm going to do? Was that the driving force, or did you just kind of get on with it?
No, it was sort of always in my mind. I guess in hospital, I said instead of the 7 summits was a goal I set myself to try and work towards, and it took a number of years. But I told myself that through this accident, I want to come out of this fitter and stronger than I was before. And I guess being able to achieve something like what I've gone and do the 7 summits, and all the work and both physical training and effort that went into that, just sort of reinforced what I'd want. My initial goals I'd set myself from the times in hospital.
Right. Okay. And now, like I said, we spoke briefly about you want to go to the Himalayas. That Often after these kind of accidents or time in hospital, you do set these goals, and you need to, and that's part of the recovery process. And it's also some of your life goals as well. But what happens now? Was there a sense of, gosh, I've done that now? Do you feel the need for another goal, or are you settled into, I've done that now, I can, I'm recovered?
Yeah, most definitely. Like I said, through my injury, and I did need, it was very tough times and in a fairly bad way at the time, and both physically and mentally. So the best way I found I could manage to deal with that was setting myself a goal and setting myself something to work towards. And I think it definitely helped enormously, sort of having this Project 74, just like it's something out on the horizon. While it took 3.5 years to get there, having that on the horizon helped enormously through my rehab. And once we actually completed it, and I can remember standing on the summit of Everest, and it was actually really bittersweet because there's so much, it has the training, the preparation, the planning, just the whole thought process for going about the 7 summits occupied, so much of my time for the last 3 years, and knowing it was all that was basically the end of it. And it was really bittersweet. And I guess for myself, I am always quite goal driven. Prior to my accident, did a lot of triathlons, and so a lot of my goals were focused around triathlon racing and things. And to not have a goal, to not have a purpose to go training each day, I'd probably struggle with. So definitely coming straight back off the mountain. And like I said, we've been discussing some things with John, and not quite in a position to state publicly what our next goals are. But there's a few. The best way I find to deal with the sort of post-expedition blues, if you like, when you come down after a big trip, is to set another goal and start working towards it. So that's what we're in the process of doing now. Okay,
good. Okay, well, do let us know what that's going to be. So you were doing triathlons and that kind of stuff. Was it? I guess, has fitness always been part of your life? Have you always kind of pushed yourself physically? From a kid, were you always sporty? Were you played cricket? What did you do?
Yeah, definitely. When we were younger, we actually grew up on a farm, so we're just outdoors all the time. There's never sort of sitting around in front of the computer or TV or anything. We're just outside running around. My parents got me into scouting very young.
Okay.
So the scouting movement, I think, is absolutely incredible. So we went right through Cubs, Scouts, Venturers, and did a lot of outdoor activities with them. And right through through high school days, I wasn't into heavy endurance sports, but definitely did a lot of, played rugby, played cricket, used to do a fair bit of sailing. And it was actually at the end of high school, bought my first bike and then started triathlon.
Okay.
Actually, my first triathlon was on an old bike I borrowed off a friend.
Okay.
And then bought. So it was the start of, end of high school that I jumped into triathlon. That's when I started doing proper serious endurance training.
Right. Okay. And again, was that was always, I mean, that's another goal-driven sport, isn't it? Were you always, once you found triathlon, did you think, I found my sport, I found what I want to do?
Triathlon I absolutely loved, and competed quite competitively for, particularly right through my uni days, for about 5 years. Here in Australia, was racing every weekend through summer, and did that intensively, and it was fantastic at the time. It hasn't, for me, well, I absolutely loved it. Being a pure road-based sport, I sort of always also loved just more out in the wilderness more as well. So
sure.
I love the endurance aspect of it, but there's parts of it wasn't. Like to mix it up with other activities as well.
Okay, and I read that you were often in trouble as a kid. Is that right?
I guess as a kid,
a bit of a handful, maybe.
Like to push the boundaries a bit, I guess, and have a bit of fun.
Okay.
Tried to stay on the right side of the law most of the times, but as kids are growing up, you just like to have a bit of fun, and we're always outside running around, getting up to some sort of mischief when we could. So
those boys.
Yeah, exactly.
I can imagine. Okay, well, I'm flitting around a little bit, but one question has just occurred to me. When you were doing the 7 in 4, we often concentrate on the peaks and the mountains and the climbs. Did you get much fulfillment from the travel? I mean, you travelled around the world, really, more than a lot of people. Were the bits in between as fulfilling as the bits on the top of the mountains?
Yeah, and I think definitely with what attracted me to the Seven Summits, even before I'd done any climbs, was just to be able to travel to such remote places and experience such different cultures. And to me, that was just as fascinating as the climbing itself.
Yeah.
And, you're talking places from, to step foot down in Antarctica, where you get a Russian jet lands on a glacier down in, or an ice runway down in Antarctica. And to step off in Antarctica was just, that in itself was a dream come true.
Yeah.
To step into the right continent. And then, like I said, all the other places we've been to, Argentina. I'd never been to Africa before, and that was the culture there. The people were so friendly, always dancing, singing was absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
And then, West Papua different again. So I think you definitely enjoyed that just as much as the climbing themselves. I think that's what's so enjoyable about the Seven Summits project.
Yeah, yeah. And you were raising money as well, weren't you?
Yeah. So through, I guess, my accident and the affiliation I'd had with Surf Lifesaving and the volunteers that had helped me that day and sustain a spinal injury. Through doing this project, I wanted to give back to those causes. So we're raising money and awareness for Surf Lifesaving in Western Australia and also Spinal Cure Australia. So Spinal Cure Australia are doing research to actually try and cure paralysis and have some remarkable projects they're working on with the intent to hopefully in a number of years to have people out of wheelchairs, potentially walking again, which is fascinating. So it requires a lot of effort and a lot of funding for that research, but wanted to help support that along with the Surf Lifesaving movement.
Okay, and how much money have you raised so far?
We raised about 45,000 Australian dollars all up. So that was between donations to my site. We had a group that came in, trekked into Everest Base Camp while we're there, and they all helped with the fundraising. And halfway through the project, when we returned to Australia to climb Kosciuszko, we did that with a weekend together organised by Rotary. We had about 100 people in total and took six wheelchair participants to the top of Kosciuszko.
Wow.
And did that as a fundraising weekend as well. So that, to be a part of that and to see the joy on particularly these kids in wheelchairs to do something, to get to the top of Australia, to see the joy in that face and be a part of that was an absolute privilege.
Yeah, good. That seems like a good place to stop. Thank you. Such a remarkable, inspirational story. It's great to to see the fundraising aspect of it and sort of changing lives as well as your own. It's very inspiring. So Steve, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
See, I told you it was an inspirational story. Thanks so much, Steve, for joining us all the way from Perth, Australia. And thank you for listening. If you have the time, please go and leave a review on wherever you get your podcast from. And join us again next month where we'll be talking to another athlete just to find out exactly what drives them, why they do what they do. Listen in.